Hello, welcome everyone. My name is ProHybrid, and I will be running the Kirby's Dream Land Trilogy for TACOthon 2. So it's not just one game, but actually three, all of Kirby's Dream Land 1, 2, and 3. The first two games being on the Game Boy, and the third actually being on the SNES. This trilogy clocks in a little over 2 hours long, and really excited to get going. So we're going to count down from 5 and go on go. Turn my game down slightly first. And here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start. So, Kirby's Dream Land, a pretty short game. The shortest of all the main series Kirby games in terms of the speedrun, clocking in at when done pretty much nearly perfectly, around 11 minutes long. I'm not exactly a perfect speedrunner in this game, so my run will probably be between 12-13 minutes, depending on how well I do. Here's the thing about Kirby's Dream Land. Very much a lot of RNG to this game, which can be manipulated, but manipulating RNG requires a lot of very specific movements, very difficult to do. So most of the time, when speedrunning this game, you're just going to be doing your best for the simple platforming, and unfortunately, already not getting a good fight here. Hopefully he throws 3 apples immediately. I had to wait for another attack before I got that KO. Oh yeah, there's a lot of luck in this game, so resetting it at a playing it at a high level really comes down to resetting, grinding out perfect movements, and just hoping that you get the RNG that you need, especially on some of the later boss fights. So yeah, this is the very first Kirby game to have come out. This Kirby game actually doesn't have copy abilities. It didn't come out until the second game, Kirby's Adventure, on the SNES, or the NES. So all the bosses are dealt with without any powers, pretty much just by impaling abilities and spinning them back out. Here on Wispy, we want him to give us apples. He can waste some time by essentially attacking us with wind shots, just like this. So pretty good RNG. We've got 3 apples, 2 wind shots, and yeah, this is going to be a pretty quick fight. Wispy can kind of be a bit of a bully, can kind of waste your time a little bit. But thankfully we're out of green grain. It's definitely the easiest of the 5 levels. Now we have Castle Lololo. Very cool level. Essentially it's designed as more of a puzzle maze type of level. There's a lot of doors that lead nowhere. So speedrunning it, we're just going to take a very specific path to get through as fast. Doing a bit of a tight jump right here. And on to this warp star. To the first mini-boss. Pretty much all of these levels will have one mini-boss before the regular boss at the end. In this case, it's one of the 2 Lololo enemies. They're going to throw some bricks at us. We're just going to inhale them, spit them back out. It's completely RNG which of the paths they take here. There's not much in the way of there being an optimal path. It doesn't really change the time here. There are actually 2 strategies for Castle Lololo. One is to go into an extra room to get an item called Curry, which you're going to see in the next level. Actually, not the next level, but oh yeah, in the next level. And that is a bit of a riskier strategy. It allows you to potentially deal with the boss faster, but only if you get a good, very specific pattern from the boss. So I'm not going to be going for it. Instead, I'm going to be doing this boss powerless. You essentially want these enemies to spawn close to each other, which allows you to potentially hit both of them in one cycle. Ideally, you can do this in 3 cycles where you hit each of them twice per cycle, but sometimes if you don't get good RNG or if you miss some shots, it can go a little bit long. One more shot here, but I gotta be careful. You want to ideally take not that much damage throughout Castle Lololo, because doing these double shots, generally, you're gonna have to take a lot of damage yourself, so if you enter this boss fight at low health, it becomes a lot harder to do so. Also, all these levels start off with a cutscene. We're just gonna skip through them and actually start. Actually, didn't want to grab that bomb there, because it's a little bit slower than just going through powerlessly, but not a big deal. If you jump on enemies from very high height, you can actually not get damaged by them. You essentially just bounce off them like so. I'm gonna take advantage of that in a few parts. Another big part of this game is that it is kind of laggy, and you can take advantage of the lag, or I guess, take advantage of the game to give you minimal lag, is a better way to put it. For example, you don't want to have anything in your mouth when you go through doors. It lags at the screen quite a bit as you transition from one room to the next. But there are different ways that you can manipulate lag to ideally get as little of it as possible. You need to be careful around these Gordos, the spiky enemies. Most of the enemies in this game will just KO you, or will do 1 of damage, whereas the Gordos will do 3. So there's an option to get Curry there, but Curry lags up the game quite a bit. It's pretty much like a power-up that allows you to shoot balls of hot fire. It's actually the same Curry that inspired it in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, in fact. I'm gonna grab this Warp Star here. But yeah, because it lags up the game quite a bit, again, we're just gonna skip it. So although this game doesn't really have, you know, the typical Kirby copy abilities that most people are familiar with, it does have essentially different items or power-ups you can use. So now we're going to use something similar to the Curry. You pretty much grab this lemon here, and this turns into sort of like a 2D shooter section with this blade called Kabula. So you want to just stay as close as possible, hitting as many of your shots while, you know, dodging at the same time. Alright, pretty good. Ideally, you can knock out Kabula before they do a charge attack, and go from the right side of the screen to the left. And that is Float Island. So the first 3 levels takes up less than half the game, and the next 2 levels, Bubbly Clouds and Mount DDD, take up pretty much longer, like 2/3 of the game. They're quite long. And they're also quite difficult with a lot of RNG, especially on the boss Krako. So this section, you can actually just walk right through. As long as you're fast enough at the very beginning, none of the enemies will hit you as long as you're just walking. I actually picked that up from the Great Tournament Beginner KDL tutorial, because he hosted a tournament, which is how I initially learned this game, through the tournament that he hosted, so I want to shout him out for that. The enemies spawn here as you move forward, so you need to be careful as you move. You'll trigger them to spawn as you move towards them. Oh, I didn't even realize I was hugging the corner up there. I wasn't fully paying attention. Didn't mean to do that. This has gone pretty good so far. I've only gotten hit once. It's pretty easy to take a lot of damage, and sometimes you might want to take, because there's not a lot of health they give you. A lot of the health that is available on this level, you have to take alternate paths, which are slower. So you really do need to be careful with conserving your health as you play through a level like Bubbly Clouds. Same thing with Mount DDD. Right, so this Krako mini-boss fight's pretty easy. Alternates between doing these quad shots across the screen and then dropping one enemy. The next Krako has quite a bit of RNG, which, if you don't know, stands for Random Number Generator. Pretty much just a fancy way to describe luck and how the game, you know, determines what luck you're gonna get. So take another Warp Star here. I'm gonna grab another one of these lemons just off to the side here. As you can see, the game does lag slightly more when I'm using it, especially when you start firing these projectiles, because this whole area is just a bunch of bricks. It allows you to go quite a bit faster. And I'm taking this low path so I can grab this extra tomato. Doesn't lose that much time, and it's going to give me full health going into the last bit of this level. Gonna be a little careful here to not exhale and hit that enemy, because otherwise it pretty much explodes. And this is the only time in the run you actually do grab Curry, just immediately after grabbing the lemon, just using it to break through these blocks. You need to do an inhale as you float through these ones, just so you don't fall down. And this final room, just hovering until you hit the door. Oh, wasn't fast enough, and I got hit there. Not a big deal though. So Krako. Pretty much what you want Krako to do is to spit out enemies at you, these waddle leaves which you can shoot back out. What he's going to do most of the time is a rotating laser attack, or is just pretty much going to bounce back and forth between the left side of the screen, the left and right side of the screen. Sometimes just floating slowly, sometimes doing these little loop-de-doops. So there's pretty much not much you can do, unless you're doing like a full game RNG manipulation where you're gonna get really good RNG. You're pretty much just hoping for good luck here. And so having a really bad Krako can unfortunately be a bit of a run killer. Need 3 more shots here. Oh, I almost missed that one. And there we go. Ideally, you can knock out Krako as it's moving from left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, or vice versa. Because if they are KO'd in the middle of the screen, you can grab the Star Rod there, and it makes the animation slightly slower. Alright, now ending with Mount DDD. Very difficult stage. There is no options to get health anywhere, so you really need to be careful with your health throughout. So I'm going to avoid getting hit by this enemy, hopefully. Hopefully. Nope, I wasted a bunch of time and I got hit by it after all. Alright, so the whole gimmick of Mount DDD is you're pretty much revisiting the first 4 levels that you did, and in each one you're going to do a small room where you have to rescue a Kirby to unlock a door, and then you're going to re-fight all of the bosses you just did. In this case, I'm not going to be going for any of the double hits. Oh, I actually didn't even inhale there. It was slow. I'm not going for any of the double hits because health conservation is a lot more important in Mount DDD as opposed to as it is in Castle Lolo. I can't really afford to leave this fight with only 1 health. If you do take a KO, you don't have to redo all of the boss fights, but it does lose quite a bit of time. You have to redo the levels. This Krako one, pretty easy actually. You're just going to be falling down, and you just want to line yourself up on this pillar, and you know you'll be safe. Actually, won't grab that, and I forgot to do it on the way down. And we're going to have the Krako rematch. So again, same as last time, a lot of RNG here. Really just going to be hoping that we get these enemies. I'm using this thing in the background as sort of a visual. Oh, again, I got hit trying to explain it, but I'm using that thing in the background as a visual cue of where I can stand, where I'm not getting hit by Krako's lasers, and where I can. Oh shoot, I keep messing that up now as I'm trying to explain it. But where I can be to avoid Krako and do a slow movement across the room there. Yeah, it took quite a bit of damage on this Krako fight. Not ideal. 3 health. What's worth noting is you can also do these boss fights in any order. I'm opting to do it. You pretty much always do Castle Lolo first because, like, you spawn right by it, and every time you complete a level, you'll spawn in the middle of the room. So it's just a bit faster to do Castle Lolo first. But beyond that, the next 3 bosses you can really just do in any order depending on preference. I personally like doing Krako earlier because of all the remaining boss fights. It's the most RNG dependent, so I'd rather just get it out of the way first. Alright, 6 apples in a row. Not bad. And moving on to Kula. Be a bit careful here. See the laser. And, approaching that kind of slows you. Those Gordos that block the door actually instantly KO if you touch them, so you need to be very careful there. Alright, I still have 3 health, so I think I'm just gonna play DDD as it is. Sometimes if you have very low health, it makes sense to just take a quick death and then do the fight immediately afterwards. Just because this fight can be a little tricky to do. So those double stars, you can actually do a very tough technique called like a double star, where you're able to hit DDD twice when he does the jumps. I can't actually do it, I haven't really practiced it that much, but it does allow you to do extra damage whenever DDD does do those jump attacks. Otherwise, his hammer moves will give 1 star. Alright, the jump's good. Alright, 6 health to 2 health. A little bit tight here, a little bit scary. If I get knocked out, I'll just redo the fight, but it would waste a bit of time, so we'll see if I can do that. Yeah, playing that safe, don't want to get hit in the process. Alright, 4 health to 2 health. Get down to the wire here. Yeah, there can be quite a few runs where you're on very good pace going into DDD, but if you don't get any good RNG, you could end up losing quite a bit of time. I'm trying to play safe here because I don't have a lot of health to work with, and when you're in the corner, it's hard to not get those stars without getting hit. So I kind of want to bait them towards the middle of the stage so I have a bit more room to work with. Not really getting great RNG right now, unfortunately. DDD's kind of just wasting a lot of time. Come on, you big penguin. Alright, there's one more. Can we get one more if we jump or something? Alright. That works. And we are on to the next one. Yeah, that DDD RNG was not good at all. And I actually have to erase the file. But it happens, it happens. So we're moving on to Kirby's Dream Land 2 Any%, which I gotta say is one of my favorite speedrun categories, if not my favorite. I've been grinding this category quite a bit since I learned it about a year ago, and yeah, it's a very fun game. It's pretty much like it's the same console as Kirby's Dream Land, it's a Game Boy game. So it's very similar in terms of the mechanics, but it does add quite a few things. First is we actually now have copy abilities, which we're going to see at the beginning of the next level. Next thing is we have Animal Friends, which is also going to be a big part of Kirby's Dream Land 3, which are pretty much like a separate kind of power-up that work, that coincide with abilities, so you can use both an Animal Friend and a power ability. And just in general though, Kirby's Dream Land 2 is a lot longer. It's like nearly 3 times as long as the original. It handles quite a bit better, not really as much lag. You know, more mini-bosses and just more content in general. So the category we're doing for this is Any%. All 3 games are Any%. In the case of Kirby's Dream Land, Any% really is the main category, unless you want to do extra mode or something a bit more gimmicky. In the case of Kirby's Dream Land 2 and Kirby's Dream Land 3, they're called Best Endings and 100% categories. Best Ending is pretty much doing the main game, but also doing some side objectives. And 100% is Best Ending, but usually adding mini-games in both KDL2 and KDL3. And in the case of KDL2 and KDL3, essentially doing this Best Ending unlocks, I guess, sort of the good ending. So because we're doing Any%, we're actually going to be getting the bad ending, kind of a mysterious, somber credits theme. So in the ability, I didn't even really talk about the ability that I grabbed. I kind of just autopiloted it over that part. I'm grabbing Burning here. And Burning, outside of using Q, is one of the strongest abilities in this game. It makes you invulnerable as you use it, and of course very, fast, a lot faster than just walking normally. So pretty much at any point where we're not using Q, which we're going to get in the next world, and I'll get into that, we're going to be ideally using Burning. Alright. Wispy's being very nice right now, giving us all the apples we want. Alright, very good. And what we're going to do actually in Kirby's Dream Land 2 is it's faster to soft reset after every boss than it is to actually wait for the boss, like, cutscene. As many people know, Kirby does the Kirby dance after beating the boss. And it's actually faster, yeah, to reset and just start off the next level than it is to watch the Kirby dance. The only con of that is you don't get back full health. Only if you do the Kirby dance will you get back to full health. So you do need to be a bit careful. If you take a lot of damage on a boss, you're going to be going into the next level, still that low health. Getting knocked back there. Fortunate. That's a bit of a tight jump. Alright, and now we're going to be getting into Ku. We saw Rick earlier, didn't grab him, but Ku is by far the most important animal friend, and one of the most important parts of the speedrun for both Kirby's Dream Land 2 and Kirby's Dream Land 3. Essentially, the master of the air. Ku is really fast. By mashing A, you move, or should I say, by pressing A, you move forward slightly in whatever direction you're holding. And so by mashing A, you go very, very fast relative to anything else in the game. So I'm going to be doing quite a bit of A mashing throughout this entire trilogy, especially these, Kirby's Dream Land 2 and Kirby's Dream Land 3. Not, unfortunately, a little slow there. Some of this movement is a bit precise. See, I'm going to try to get by the door here, past the Scordo. Barely get it, just clip the side of it. Alright, So now we're going to be grabbing another power-up. We're going to be grabbing Cutter, and we're going to see an example of using both an animal friend as well as a regular power-up, and sort of the combination of that. And in this case, the combination of Coup and Cutter is utterly busted. It is incredibly strong against all the mini-bosses and bosses. Essentially, you launch 3 Cutter blades up close, which allows you to do triple damage to like all these bosses and eliminate them very, very quickly. Mini-bosses are really, really common throughout like all of Kirby Dream Land 2. And really, for nearly all of them, you're going to be using some combination of Coup and Cutter. So really getting good at the boss spacings, being able to recognize their patterns so you can get up close and do these like triple blade shots is a big part of speedrunning this game. Alright, let me go behind right here. Oh, got a little too close there, unfortunately. Not bad. Now that boss battle in Rough, essentially they just go back and forth between the left and right side of the screens. You kind of just want to track them down, get up as close as you can, and use those Cutter blades. Now we're going into Ripple Field, which is the water world. Funnily enough, we actually do use Kine, the fish, which is good in water in this run, but we're not going to use Kine at all in Ripple Field for any percent at least. We're going to stick with Coup, and we're going to be using a lot of Coup in the water movements. Coup in the water handles pretty interestingly. Ooh, got hit there. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Essentially, unlike the in the ground, you can't just mash to go faster. So a bit of a break on the hands there. Essentially, you're very floaty, and it's just about being able to navigate these spaces with, you know, while in this sort of floaty state. And it does lead to a few very challenging parts, especially if you're trying to keep an ability throughout these water areas. You don't have quite the same maneuverability as you do in the air. Alright. At the beginning of 3-2 here, we're gonna do a bit of a manip. I'm gonna go down, then I'm gonna go up, like this, and that's gonna despawn some of these enemies so I can get to the door a bit easier. Very quick, but very useful thing to know. So ideally, if I'd have Cutter here, you know, it would help me navigate this situation, but I will have a chance to re-grab Cutter in the next room, so it's not a big deal. You can see these jets that almost look like the pipes in Super Mario have water that pushes you in certain directions. And right here, you have to mash super quickly, otherwise that jumping enemy will clip you. You have to actually mash very fast in one spot. Alright, so I can no longer afford to lose Cutter without losing 30 plus seconds until I reach the boss of this level, because there's no other chances to get Cutter, and Cutter is very important for getting the boss of the world pretty quickly. So, level 3-3 is pretty infamous for Kirby's Dream Land 2. What I'm essentially going to be trying to do is keep Cutter through a room, an underwater room. So if I lose Cutter in the water, I can't re-inhale it and get it back. And I'm going to be trying to get through this room with some careful movements so that I can keep Cutter through it. I did that very slow right there. Playing a little bit safe. I haven't maybe practiced this part as much as I should recently. But that's all good. So I'm going to be trying to move in specific ways so that I can manipulate the frogs to go where I want them to. Usually holding in the corners. And my goal is pretty much just to not get hit here. Way back in the day, this was considered like a task type of strategy before, you know, runners found, you know, that it was viable to do an RTA with some practice. And it does save quite a bit of time. A couple more frogs to deal with. So yeah, this actually isn't RNG. There's a lot of RNG or randomness in this game, but this is not. You can manipulate the frogs depending on where you are in the screen when the frogs come into view. So I'm able to get through there unscathed, not bad. And now, on to sweet stuff. An anglerfish. Gonna get up close. I'm gonna knock out these starfish, which are just projectiles, but if you let them sort of wander, they can mess you up. Ooh, fortunately doing a bad job timing some of my blades there. Kinda letting sweet stuff wander. There we go. And we are out of Ripple Field. On to Iceberg. Iceberg, essentially the ice level. And this will be the one time in the run where we actually get to use an animal friend that's not Ku. We get to use Kind as part of this. There are some water sections in Iceberg, which really help to have Kind with. But due to some routing, we are actually intentionally going to drop Ku after a certain part, which I'll get into. Alright, this Blocky, gonna get up close. I'm gonna hopefully he doesn't charge at me. Alright, good. Good pattern there. And this room's a bit tricky. We're essentially going downwards, so you need to be able to move fast. I'm trying to move past those spray enemies before they actually jump up and hit me. I'm gonna hug the wall right here and move at an angle so I'm not hitting the enemies on the hill. A bit tricky to move downwards in a room like this. Alright, 4-2, not too bad of a level. We are intentionally going to drop Ku here because it ends up being faster to do most of this world without Ku, and then we re-grab Ku in World 5. This first room is a wind room, but we have Ku. Any rooms that are wind rooms, like on the actual ground, not underwater, generally you can move past them in the opposite direction with Ku, otherwise the wind will push you, and you can't like move in the opposite direction of the wind. Gonna be dodging these spikes here. I can dodge that last one. I have to do some very tight movement too. And we drop Ku, because otherwise these blocks here, you have to do like all of them, because Ku is, you know, a 2x1 object as opposed to Kirby, which can fit in these 1x1 spaces. The game does force you, force you to grab burning here. It puts these ice blocks in your way. Pretty much just show you the mechanics so you understand how you have to get through it. Oh, wait, did that a little bit too early and I didn't get the recoil I wanted. So yeah, most of the sections in this game, as I mentioned, where you're not using Ku, you're probably going to be using burning. This room's pretty tricky. I use some very specific movements so I can avoid like all the projectiles as well as all the spikes. I delay here and fall right behind this enemy. Alright, Frost is giving us a bad pattern. We ideally want him to just stand completely still, but he felt like schmoovin' today, moving around. And now we're gonna grab Kind. So Kind functions similarly to Ku when in the water, as in you can mash and you go quite a bit faster. Outside of that though, Kind is a lot worse on the ground because you essentially hop literally like a fish out of water. Makes the platforming quite a bit more difficult, as you can't float like you can with Kirby, or you don't have the maneuverability as you do with Ku. So that section is all about just like moving in and out of the water, and now we're gonna see me go through here, doing some, what I call the fish platforming. I'm using the ice ability in conjunction with Kind. It pretty much gives you this ice force field. Very useful to have, because there's a lot of enemies that I'm pretty much jumping right on top of. And I'm going to end the level grabbing Burning here. Burning, when used in Kind, isn't the same as when you use it normally. It pretty much turns into like a projectile weapon, as we're going to see on this boss. You launch these fireballs. They have a bit of an immunity after you shoot, so I'm timing them in a way. There we go, that was actually really good. So I'm timing them in a way so that I'm not, you know, waiting for them to have their, you know, their post-hit immunity, then I can hit them right immediately again afterwards. This is an auto-scroller. You have a couple of auto-scrollers throughout Kirby's Dream Land 2, especially once we reach World 7. There's quite a bit of auto-scrollers, and there's also a few throughout Kirby's Dream Land 3. In Kirby's Dream Land 3, there's actually ways to skip some of these auto-scrollers, but we have no such way to do it in Kirby's Dream Land 2. Really all you need to do is be able to keep burning throughout, because burning with Kind is going to be very important for the boss here. Alright, these enemies can throw blades. Got lucky there that they didn't. It's pretty much just RNG. And the next RNG section is these cannons. Where they aim is, you know, where you are, but the frequency and like how often they shoot, or when they shoot, is also all just luck, and you just don't want them to shoot at you as you hop by. Now, we got Ice Dragon. Similar to the last mini-boss, I'm just going to stay as close as I can and time these shots as their post-immunity wears off. The only thing we don't want Ice Dragon to do is to fly up into the air. It's a rare chance for Ice Dragon to do that, but it's the worst pattern we can hit. And gonna get through there. not bad at all. So, that's the end of Kind, unfortunately. Not gonna need him for the rest of the run. Gonna drop that and then re-inhale fire. This level 5-1, as well as the next level 5-2, are both powerless levels where you're taking advantage of burning. Definitely some of the trickiest levels in the game. There's a lot of skill that goes into, you know, doing the most optimal strategy. Like even right here, I'm gonna do a safer strategy. You can do more burns there to go faster, but you need to time them very properly, otherwise you're gonna get clipped and lose your ability and have to re-inhale it. It's good to keep burning throughout all 5-1 and 5-2. Not only because burning is fast, but we're also going to need burning to use as a projectile for a quick kill on the 5-2 boss. Alright, a lot of enemies here, doing some specific movements to avoid them. Jumping up here, burning over them, walking a bit, and then doing 2 more burns, and then I'm gonna do a long jump, wait, and I got it. So I need to get 3 burns on YU, and then I need to get, oh, unfortunately I actually messed it up. Okay, so I back it up. What I wanted to do is have YU throw a projectile into the corner, where I'm gonna then drop my ability. I inhale both of them and use a double star to knock him out. Unfortunately, he actually, I think because I messed up my movement a little bit, he jumped the wrong way and lost a few seconds, but not a big deal. The worst case scenario there is to have him do a teleport after he jumps away and just waste a bunch of time, or to lose your ability or miss a shot. Got another auto-scroller here. So, just going to take it slow. A few enemies, you need to know where they are. Alright, there we go. I broke the wrong blocks I wanted to. I was a little too high, but I still managed to find the door. Don't want to get caught and getting crushed. And 5-3 is pretty cool. At the very beginning of this level, there's 3 different paths, and this is the first point in the game where you have access to all three animal friends pretty much with like full ease of access. So in this case, we're going to take the top path, gives us Q, and we're going to roll with Q for the rest of level 5 pretty much. But it also does mean that if we do lose Q, we have an easier way of regaining him as opposed to going all the way back to 2-1, which is where we got him the first time. Little underwater pipe area. Definitely not as hard as the one in 3-3. It's very short. You just need to hold up and down at the right times. Also, these propeller enemies you can see right there, they're unique enemies that really only target you if you have an animal friend, and if they target you, they will instantly KO your animal friend and revert you back to Kirby, which can be pretty scary. And sometimes they're in some pretty awkward spots. You'll actually see in 5-4 here, there's going to be one very close to a door I want to go through. Need to do some tricky movement here. Gonna hold down, barely dodge this enemy. Gonna hold down to the rock here, barely dodge that enemy. And then we're gonna approach this door. We're gonna try to very quickly, there we go. Gonna enter it while dodging both the enemies to the left and right of it. This mini-boss, Stitch, pretty infamous mini-boss. The only one in KDL2 that actually has invulnerability. You have to wait for him to throw his spikes before you can actually damage him. And depending on what patterns he can give you, can waste quite a bit of time. I'm gonna ditch Cutter here, because I want to grab this burning, which is going to be important for the next level. I'm going to do something very cool here. Kind of like a smaller version of 3-3, and I already messed it up, never mind. What I was hoping to do, and I'll still do it for these fishes, I'm doing what's called a fish dodge. You can use burn to knock them out, but this is a bit faster. You need to do some tight water movement, and unfortunately I actually just messed up the first one. You want to keep burning through there, because there's a whole bunch of blocks upcoming, and burning can get through them a lot quicker. You're just going to see me do a lot of the inhales here, sort of back it up. And because of this, I'm also taking quite a bit of damage. I think I lost like 3 health there. Not a big deal, though. I'm gonna grab the spark here. Whoops. No, 1 health. I need to be careful. There's a tomato coming up, but, oh, I lost Q. Okay. It happens. It happens. I will re-grab Q before I do the boss of this world. Ah, well. What I do need to do is keep Cutter. I'm gonna need Cutter and Q for the World 5 boss. So as I mentioned, I can quickly re-grab Q from 5-3. I just need to make sure that I can keep Cutter. It's a lot slower to have to re-grab that. Got an auto-scroller here, and funnily enough, there actually is a tomato. There's both a tomato before and after this auto-scroller, so if I was able to hold off a bit longer, I would have been able to just heal up with Q. But yeah, fortunately taking all that damage in the last level did not pay off well for me. This room's actually quite a bit different with Q, because you have to navigate through those blocks, but otherwise we're just following through, which is quite a bit faster. There is actually a route where you drop Q in 5-4 and then do it powerless, and it saves 1 second, but no runners have actually gone for it yet. So just gonna re-grab Q here, and exit the level. No big deal. Now, Shine and Bright, probably the worst boss fight in this game. Very, very frustrating. A lot of RNG here in terms of what attacks they go for. That was actually really good. That was actually really good. Alright, cool. Like, I wasted some time, so I had to re-grab Q, but the boss fight itself was nice. I didn't get hit. Trying to get up close to them is pretty tricky, because sometimes they have attacks where they're just going to move right at you at close range. Throw a blade here. Now I'm gonna be a bit of a cool guy here. I'm gonna go for a strategy that only saves 1 second, and it kills me if I do wrong. And I got it. So we did the strategy. Going under here saves 1 second, but of course I'm very close to the bottom of the screen. If you go ever too slightly lower, take a death there. But did it just to flex on stream a little bit. Oops. Alright, so this next level is interesting. You're forced to use ice blocks to progress to the next room, kind of the same way in 4-2 we had to use fire to break through some ice blocks. The only thing is you cannot do this while holding Q, so we're actually forced to drop Q, because you can't just drop Q and then pick them up to re-grab your ability, unfortunately. So, have to drop Q there, so that we can get through here. Which is going to lead to one of the biggest RNG moments in the game coming up. But we'll get to that shortly. 6-2 and 6-3 are pretty cool, because they're, they're Kirby levels, and honestly, the Kirby levels in like Dreamland 2 are pretty fun to do. Like, Q is so dominant that you don't generally use Kirby, but some of these levels still, like, very fun to do, even powerless. Alright, upcoming is 6-3. Very cool room, which we would call the Wind Donut. It's pretty much a whole bunch of rotating, or not rotating, but a whole bunch of circle rooms with wind pushing in directions. We're hopefully going to use burning and some specific movements to get through it as quickly as possible, but it's possible to mess up and essentially get caught in the Wind Donuts and lose a whole bunch of time. Even before that, though, we're just going to be doing some navigation in the pond, using ice to... Oh! Yeah, it was a little pretty bad there. Usually I'm supposed to go under that stitch, and I kind of approached it the same way I did the first one and got hit. Not good. Alright, I'm gonna grab burning here, and we're gonna do hopefully 3 burns to get through the rings. And we unfortunately messed it up. A little bit rusty here. Yeah, we're gonna do the slowest possible window here, unfortunately. It is what it is. But yeah, ideally you can get through there in a single burn, but you need to have some timing, and I just didn't quite have it there. Get there. Alright. So, in 6-4, we're going to do another Captain Stitch fight. Afterwards, we're going to get a bag. The bag has a 1 in 3 chance, random chance, to give any one of the animals. So ideally, we get the 1 in 3 as coup, but it's no guarantee that we get coup. There is a way to manipulate RNG. Can't really do that myself, at least not it's like full extent. So really, we're just going to hope for the 1 in 3. But I am going to touch the wall. Nope. Yeah, unfortunately, getting messed up there. I can still get coup, but this Stitch fight itself is also RNG to get the pattern new ones. So you can hopefully do this in one cycle. There we go. And not what we wanted. Alright, so that's okay. What we'll have to do then is we're gonna, after this level, actually head back to World 5, go to 5-3, and re-grab coup. Although it takes up to like 30 seconds to go actually re-grab coup, it's definitely worth it. Coup just makes all the following levels so much faster that it's worth taking the time lost to go re-grab them. Oops, there we go. Gonna change into stone form here, get through this room a lot faster. Gonna drop stone. No longer need it. Oops. There we go. And gonna keep on with Cloudy Park. Gonna hit the right side of those enemies so I can do a damage boost through the Gordo. And I'm trying to do, a damage boost forward as opposed to getting knocked backwards. A little optimization there. Because the hurt box of coup, when I'm in this form, isn't actually Kirby, it's coup itself, you can see that Kirby kind of grazes the enemy, but I'm not actually taking any damage. And you take advantage of that a lot throughout the run. Using Spark here. Hashtag Spark Strats. To get through all the remaining enemies a bit faster. You can also just fly over them, but you have a chance to get hit, or for them to give you a bad pattern you don't want. Then I'm gonna re-grab the cutter here, because we have both a mini-boss in the next level as well as the World 6 boss, both of which we need cutter for. In these wind rooms, it's actually a bit faster to stick to the ground, as opposed to going towards the top of the room. A bit odd, but it speeds you up. Alright, so we have a mini-boss here, and it's actually in the wind, so I need to be careful. The wind can kind of like push you into the mini-boss. Fortunately, I didn't, one of my shots I only landed 2 of the blades as opposed to 3 of the blades, so the boss took a bit of an extra cycle to KO there. Not a big time loss, but it happens. Now, going from the wind room into another water section. Need to be careful. Ideally, we can keep cutter throughout this whole water section. We need Cutter for the boss, but it takes about 30 seconds to re-grab Cutter from this position if I lose it. Maybe not quite 30 seconds, but upwards of 20. So you need to get through this frog room. So it's a maze, you have to take a very specific path. Most of these frogs I'm going to attack. Some of them you can slip by depending on what pattern they give you. It's pretty much RNG in this case. And a bit of a weird thing in this room, you're floating upwards, you need to not move so you don't get hit by any of these enemies, and you also get slight boosts of acceleration, slight boosts of speed whenever you throw the triple blades. Not exactly sure why, but you can take advantage of that in that situation. And now we have Kracko. This first phase of Kracko is very RNG. You pretty much want him to stay out and to allow you to get these hits off. I did a pretty bad job there, fortunately. Yeah, not good RNG, and I did take a hit. Thankfully, the second phase of Kracko is not RNG. It just requires some optimization. You pretty much need to be as close as possible. You want to get all 3 of your blades off on all 3 hits, so you can do the most amount of damage. See, like right there I missed one of the blades, right there I missed all the blades, right there I missed one of the blades. So doing Kracko perfectly, where you just, you know, have triple hits on every single shot, is pretty tricky, but it does allow you to get through the fight very quickly. Alright, not bad. And we are into World 7, Dark Castle, the final world of Kirby Dream Land 2. So yeah, Dark Castle is by far the longest world, clocking in at around a little under 9 minutes. There are 7 levels as opposed to most of the other worlds, which have anywhere from, you know, 3 to 6. And every single one of these levels will end with a mini-boss. So a bit of a boss rush. And pretty much all of these mini-bosses, you know, have some degree of RNG in terms of what the optimal pattern is. So even if you have a very good run coming into Dark Castle, you know, if you get unlucky on some of these mini-bosses, including the final boss, King Deity, you know, you could lose quite a bit of time. One of the reasons that World 7 is pretty slow is that there's quite a few auto-scrollers. There's 4 auto-scrollers. Ooh, I actually messed up my movement here. I didn't need to attack one of the enemies behind me, but I had to attack someone in front of me. A little bit of auto-piloting on my end. But very good boss fight there. It's ideal that they sort of just sit in that bottom right corner, but they can move around a bit more. I'm gonna start this level just holding down. If we move just left or right, we're gonna get clipped by some of those enemies, so you need to just hold down. Remember that every time you start the level. An interesting thing about Dark Castle is that many of the levels are repeated and then mirrored. So you do essentially like 3 levels, and then you do those 3 levels again, but they're like rotated in terms of the map. So instead of moving left to right, you move right to left. And then the world, or level 7-7, or 7-7 is the unique level. Unfortunate. Not a good pattern there. I could have, even with the bad pattern, I still could have done that fight a bit better, if I was a bit more efficient with my shots. In this first room, a whole bunch of enemies are going to spawn as you approach them, so you just need to be able to, you know, pause in a few spots, throw your blades, take your time. I'm gonna do some cool movement here. Gonna throw 1 blade, and I'm gonna try to hit 2 enemies here. Yep, 1, 2, and then we're gonna get through. Another auto-scroller here. In certain parts of these auto-scrollers, some of those propeller enemies that will KO your animal friend are around, so I'm gonna be trying to hug the opposite corner of the room, make sure that I don't trigger them. They will only start attacking you if you get within a certain range of them. You can actually see in the bottom left corner, I just passed by one, it was sort of sleeping. Tomato here, got a bit of health. Also, if you do take the wrong path, some of these auto-scrollers, you can get crushed pretty easily, especially in the 7-6 one. Okay, good. Frosty pattern. So Frosty can pretty much just run around, and this Frosty's unique that as he runs, he has like almost like a shield protecting him, making it very hard to damage him. But I got a good pattern there. He just sort of stood still, allowed me to get a bit of damage off, and then set up a double star. Then we can immediately just re-grab Cutter here. Oh, whoops, that's actually not the Cutter. I wanted to re-grab that Cutter and then set it up to do that, and I grabbed the first one. Wasn't really paying attention there, unfortunately. So you may have remembered this exact auto-scroller that we did in 7-1, except this time we're moving right to left. Also, the enemy patterns, or like the enemies and stuff in the hallway is a bit different. Same thing as Frosty, you pretty much want to get up close, do a bit of damage, which you knock off 4 of their bars of health, then you take Cutter and one of their projectiles, turn it into a double star, KO them. And in the case of YU, inhaling YU gives you Cutter, so you get it immediately right back, which is good because we need Cutter for the next level. One of the good things about World 7 is that Cutter is very readily available. It's like by far the most important ability in most of the boss fights, but in most worlds, if you lose Cutter, you usually have to backtrack 20 to 30 seconds to get like a backup Cutter. Whereas in World 7, it's readily available, you don't lose that much time in a lot of situations for not having the ability. Or for not having to go, backtrack a long way to get the ability. Again, move a little carefully around these enemies, wait for them to float low, and keep up high so I can just go right over them. Alright, nice blocking pattern, very, very good. Doing that jump like that allows you to get the perfect pattern, which I actually got. And I landed all my hits too, so it went very fast. Unfortunately, Blocky can sometimes just run around the floor, and when he runs, he's very quick. It becomes very frustrating to try to pin him down. I'm gonna grab a little bit of health right here, and then after the second Gordo, I'm gonna hold straight down and go in here. Now, I have to go top, bottom, or more specifically top, bottom, and then the third one you can go either top or middle, and then bottom. If you take the wrong path in this auto-scroller, you will get crushed and lose both Q and Cutter, and you will lose a significant amount of time. So, can't be like autopiloting here. I think the middle path here. Not that it really matters, but the middle path, some people like to call it the gamer path. It's a bit riskier, ever so slightly. Alright, and final Captain Stitch fight here. What we want Stitch to do is charge at us. He might just fly all over the map. We want him to charge at us and throw his spikes. Like so. And that is a one-cycle Stitch. Very, very good. Yeah, Stitch can really troll you. He can just sort of fly all across the map, and it can go from a 1-cycle fight to literally a 3, 4, 5-cycle fight. You can lose dozens of seconds, and it's pretty frustrating. Especially considering you're at the very end of a run, it could be a very easy way to lose a run that's on PvP-based at the very end. This level's pretty cool. You go through a whole bunch of rooms. You just need to memorize what the rooms are and what specific movements. So right here, gonna knock out a couple of these Waddle Dees. This one I can go just hold straight up, and this one I have to sort of move to the left here. Whoops, or move to the right, and kind of do it a little slow. A little optimization done by Dark Ryulu, where you can throw the blade at that knight at the left to protect you. Oops, that was... Oh, whoops, I dropped, okay. I had Cutter, and then I entered the door, and if you enter a door with an ability, you just spit it out instead of inhaling it, so I just spat out Cutter by accident. So we're gonna do this fight powerless then, and I'll re-grab Cutter. Kind of a dumb mistake, but it happens. Hashtag reset, honestly. Otherwise this was a very, very good Dark Castle. I'm actually gonna drop Q. You no longer need Q. In fact, you can't even do the final boss with Q, because you have to go through a 1x1 gap, and you just cannot fit. And on to King DD. So unlike Kirby's Dream Land 1, I mean, there's still a whole bunch of RNG for DD, but actually having a power-up makes it a lot easier. Oh, shoot. I've already taken the hit. So pretty much, you do want DD to jump. By jumping, he'll spawn 2 stars, which allows you to do quite a bit of damage. And unlike Kirby's Dream Land 1, it's not like a very difficult technique to do these double stars. Otherwise, if you need these hammers, we're not going to actually inhale them. We're just going to, you know, stick around. Oop, I'm doing a very bad job here. Okay, he's going to sleep for a bit. Just finishing outside the 39-minute range. Very sad. Oops. Alright, and we are on to the final game, Kirby's Dream Land 3. Might have to do some stuff with my audio real quick. Turn it up a bunch. And the first thing we're going to do while starting off Kirby's Dream Land 3 is we're immediately going to reset. And the reason we do that is it allows you actually to skip the cutscene. The only con of doing that is if you have an ability or an animal friend in this game, you would immediately lose it. But in this case, we're starting with nothing, so we lose nothing just by immediately doing that reset and saving about a second on the title screen. So Kirby's Dream Land 3, first off, we're on a whole different system. We're no longer on a handheld, we're on SNES. A big improvement in terms of the graphics and the audio capabilities of this game. And just even in the controls and all of that. You know, handles a lot differently than the first 2 games. And jump over that blade there, saw that coming? So a lot of the speedrun is revolved around abusing Ku again. We're going to get Ku in 1-3. In the first 2 levels, we are going to do powerless. We will also use Kine at one point, similarly for a water level. In this case, it'll be World 2. Kirby's Dream Land 3 also, in comparison to the first 2 games, is a lot longer. Kirby's Dream Land 3 is pretty much longer than the first 2 games combined, so we're not even quite at the halfway point of this, and still have the whole game to do. So that's sort of a perspective of how long this game is. It's only made up of 5 worlds, but each world has 6 levels, some of which can be pretty lengthy. And finally, we're going to be abusing, or I say abusing, we're going to be using some 1-player, 2-controller strategies, a few minor ones, at a few different points in this run. There's a lot of advanced strategies you can do for 1-player, 2-controller that have been innovated, a lot of which by Dark Ryulu, who holds the world records for all of any percent best ending and 100% for this game. I'm going to be doing a couple of basic ones that save, you know, small increments of time, and then one easy one to do that can save even up to 20 seconds. And I'll get to that. Pretty much the second player in this game can spawn GUI, which I'll show shortly, and control him to do certain things like hold an ability, and can hold an animal friend, but only one of you or the second player can hold an animal friend, although both of you can have different abilities. Another thing to know about this game is iframes, or invincibility frames. So in most Kirby games, you get hit, you have invincibility frames. The iframes in Kirby's Dream Land 3 are notoriously short, so you can take a lot of damage very quickly in this game, and go from a lot of health to almost no health very quickly. To sort of help offset this fact, there is a way to abuse the GUI 2-player stuff to essentially have unlimited health, but the unlimited health you have can only go up to 3 of the 10 health. So it's not perfect. Alright, so 1-3, we're going to be grabbing Ku in this first room. All throughout Kirby's Dream Land 3, they have these optional rooms tucked away that give you usually, up to like 2 or 3 of the animal friends at a time. Ku Coup, just like in Kirby's Dream Land 2, you get a small boost of momentum just by pressing A, or I actually don't think it's A, it's a different button because it's an SNES controller. But by mashing that button, you essentially are able to go very fast. Got a bit of an auto-scroller here. So, all of the blank dash 3 levels have minigames. In best ending and 100%, you actually have to do them, but in any percent, we want to skip them, or more specifically, we want to intentionally fail them. So, also what I did there is I had Gooey, I spawned him after I'd already done my guess, so that I didn't have to, have both players do it, or do the minigame, and I had him move to the other side of the room and save a small bit of time. Saves about 2 seconds per minigame, because you do 5 of those minigames, you can save about 10 seconds throughout an entire run. Roughly, something along those lines. There's a lot of cool things you can use 2-player with. Many of the glitches in this game, like skipping auto-scrollers or even zips in some cases, generally come about from abusing, 1-player 2-controller strategies. -4, a bit of a tricky level. Going through these caves. We have these things which pretty much act as cannons. Same thing in case 64, you don't have like actual cannons, but these things launch you. You grab this candy here and you move to the right instead of up so you don't trigger the other cannon. Pretty much gonna try to take candy as far as I can. So to break these blocks, I'm actually gonna dismount from Q, and then use my head to break through them, like so. It's made here. Also, I should point out these games. So these goal games at the very end, you can call it generally referred to as jumping, or these the goal games or whatever. A whole bunch of items you can get by controlling Q or controlling Kirby and where they jump. So ideally, from those games, I'm trying to pull tomatoes or peps so I can keep my health high. Health management is just pretty important throughout this game because some levels don't actually offer health. And as I mentioned, it's pretty easy because of the iframes in this game to take a lot of damage very rapidly. Especially if you're intentionally trying to do damage boosting strategies. Yep, 1-5 is pretty easy level. Also, you may have noticed these rooms before the goal game. So all these levels for best ending are pretty much missions, and you have to go through the level while doing a certain objective. And to verify that you did the objective, there's that room at the end. But for the context of any percent, we're not actually doing any of them, we're just going to skip by them. This room is designed pretty much as a bit of a maze room, but not bad at all once you actually know the specific path to go. In this next room, I'm going to be grabbing an ability called Clean. Clean was introduced in Kirby's Dream Land 3, and I think it's the only game that has Clean, except maybe Star Allies might have it. I'm not sure. I've never actually played Star Allies. But yeah, Clean seems kind of like a silly ability, but Clean paired with both Ku as well as Chu, which we'll see towards the end of the game, is absurdly broken. It has a very, very high damage per second. So most of the games, or most of the bosses in this game, will be revolved around having Ku, or Chu in the case of the Final World, and Clean, and just immediately destroying the bosses. Alright, first boss, Wispy. The fourth Wispy of the Trilogy run. So we had 2 actually in Dreamland 1. So unfortunately I didn't, that's quite a hit right there. But yeah, Clean does an absurd amount of damage, and makes this boss, like, very easy. And that is Grassland. So yep, this game only has 5 worlds. You know, most games generally have 6 or 7, but most of the worlds are pretty long with longer levels. So Ripple Field is the water level, named after the water level from Kirby Dream Land 2. The first part of this world, like essentially the beginning of it, we're going to be using Ku. We'll be transitioning to use Kai throughout the middle portions, and then at the very end, before the final boss, we're going to be going back to Ku. The reason is Ku handles very, very poorly in the, Ku handles very, very poorly in the water, so it makes it very slow. You can manage to go faster in the water with Ku, unlike in Kirby Dream Land 2, but it's still very slow, so Kai works a lot better throughout this world. Quite a bit of mashing. Should go fast. And we got the tomato. Pretty good. So we're going to be using Ku for this first room, and then the next room, we're going to switch it out for Kind. I'm also going to shout out this game's soundtrack. Definitely one of the strongest Kirby soundtracks overall. Kind of subtle in a lot of places, but it's like very strong. Actually, I shouldn't have dropped Ku right away. I could have used Ku to go a bit faster in the water to get to Kind. Alright, Dark Relu, thank you for stopping by. Hope you have a nice time. KDL3 world record holder, everybody. So yeah, Kind, same way as in Kirby's Dream Land 2, where he handles, in the water, you can mash and you go pretty fast. The difference between Kind and Kirby's Dream Land 2 and 3 is that he handles way better outside the water in Kirby's Dream Land 3. He actually moves quite fast, and you can bounce off enemies and such. So it makes the platforming a lot less frustrating when you're outside the water, and you are still going to be outside the water for long sections at a time. Oops. Wanted to land a bit further so I could have bounced on top of the enemy. Unfortunately, I fell a bit short. Oh, well, that's one thing worth noting in this game, as unlike most Kirby games, in Kirby's Dream Land 3, getting hit once doesn't lose your ability. However, getting hit twice in rapid succession does. So it's a bit more generous, and of course, I think it's all built around the iframe system, which is why, get hit twice. You can get hit twice within pretty rapid succession. Oops. There we go. So another minigame here. Again, I'm going to wait till after I select my option in the minigame. It's going to tell me that I failed, and I want to fail, because I want to get through it faster. And I'm going to spawn Gooey, have Gooey move to the second pillar to the right side of the room. Okay. Be careful, I only have 1 health actually right now. So I'm going to inhale Gooey. get the health back from that. Grab this pen as well. So if you are at 1 health, you can spawn Gooey. Usually Gooey, if you have full health and you spawn Gooey with the second player, it'll take some of your health, but you can spawn Gooey at 1 health, and pretty much then re-inhale Gooey and get some of your health back. But you can only do it to get up to 3 health, so it's not quite perfect, but it does allow you to essentially have, you know, infinite health. As long as you're willing to constantly drop Gooey, inhale them, drop Gooey, inhale them repeatedly. There's no limit to it. Alright, on to 2-4. Sort of a mix of a you know, a water level and a regular level, as a lot of Ripple Field is. And there'll be an auto scroller as well. So we triggered the auto scroller here by starting to climb up the steps. So many of the auto scrollers in this game can be skipped. It pretty much involves having one player stay, like the main player stay on the screen, having the second player as Gooey while using the ability go off screen and navigating their way to the door. It is very difficult to do and requires a lot of memorization, as you're pretty much going through a bunch of rooms essentially blind. Here, get up. There's a secret path that allows you to go to an alternate room, which is the mission of this level. Oops, almost made it there. Alright, I'm done with 2-4. So 2-5 is a very cool level. This is going to be pretty much the only point in the run outside of the minigames where I'm actually going to be making use of a 1-player 2-controller strategy. Essentially, I'm going to be giving, at one point, giving Kine the fish to Gooey, the second player, so that I can go through a one-by-one block with Kirby that you can't fit through otherwise. And then I'm going to have Gooey bring me Kine once I pass that one-by-one block. There's a way to get Kine there, like, regularly, but it takes quite a bit of time, and this saves close to 30 seconds, and it's a pretty basic strategy, as you'll see. Oops, getting hit there. Would have liked to jump on top of them, do a little bounce. So what we do, spawn Gooey, dismount, and then give Gooey to Kine. Gooey follows you when you go off screen, so I can pretty much have him with, you know, Kine, follow me to the other part of this room, and then re-inhale him. So I'm going against some wind currents here. I'm gonna grab candy. Helps speed me up, but you have to do quite a bit of mashing in a situation like this. Gonna do some bounces here. Very good. Very nice. Alright. We're schmoovin'. This enemy's gonna jump, so we're just gonna run under him. And we got through this level while still holding a decent amount of health, which is pretty nice. Going into the next level, into the boss of this world with low health, can be pretty problematic. So, there's 2 routes. The faster route is to actually grab Ku right back in 1-3, and then to do 2-6. But you can also grab Ku at the end of 2-6. So what I'm going to be doing is carrying Kine throughout this level and then grabbing Ku at the end. I think the strategy, a little bit slower, is a bit more beginner friendly. I think doing this level is actually a bit easier with Kine, for one room in particular. One thing I do need to do is I need to grab Clean, because I'm going to be using Clean, or I'm going to be abusing Coup and Clean again like I did for Wispy. So these enemies with the broomstick will give you it, so I'm just going to grab that, hold on to it. So order for this is top, bottom, and then second from the top. If you go in the wrong order, you have to go through a cave to sort of backtrack. So a little bit of memorization there. In this room in particular, I think it's a lot easier to do with Kine, because you can just stick in the water and you go really fast, and you're able to avoid those like spinning obstacles, whereas if you're with Coup, you have to, it's a lot harder to dodge them, and you can take a lot of damage. As I said, keeping health, especially for the boss coming up, is pretty important. So, Coup is in this room tucked away. Very convenient that you can just go to the level with Kine and then grab him. Trying to avoid taking any hits here, because I said taking 2 hits in rapid succession is what loses you your ability. You can get hit once and you'll be fine, and I want to be able to keep Clean here. And we are on to Acro. You might recognize this boss if you've played Kirby 64. It is the same boss, essentially the Orca, which is what Acro is backwards, isn't it? So, first phase we're going to get 3 hits, and then we're going to do 3 hits in the water. The water phase is a lot trickier, because, you know, if you lose your ability in the water, you can't actually regain it. But Acro is a lot more maneuverable, or has a lot more maneuverability when they're in the water, which makes it a bit trickier. Not quite close enough there, we go. Alright. Not bad at all. And on to Sand Canyon. I would say Sand Canyon, of the 5 worlds, is probably the second hardest. I think second hardest, maybe even the hardest. Definitely probably the least beginner friendly. I'm gonna ditch Clean here. I no longer need it, I'm actually going to want to grab Fire. While Clean Coup is the ideal combo for most of the actual levels, or sorry, Clean Coup is ideal for most of the bosses, Fire Coup is ideal for most of the levels. You do this downwards diagonal burn that gives you invulnerability and allows you to break blocks, which is otherwise very slow with Coup. This room, you know, is a tunnel and it's very narrow, so I'm trying to stick towards the ceiling at times and, you know, hugging the corners when I can so I can avoid the enemies. One doesn't have a lot in terms of recovery items. There's one pet very early in the level, but beyond that, you don't really get anything. So if you take a lot of damage early, you're gonna have to be very, very careful with the back half of this level. A few unnecessary hits towards there at the end. A little slow there. I wanted to ideally grab Tomato, but I did not time it properly. Gourmet Race in the background, iconic Kirby theme. Very good remix of it too. Oops. There's a tomato towards the very back of this level, which I'll probably... Oops, didn't want to do that. Oops, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. There we go. So what I wanted to do was drop Gooey, just get a little health back, but in the process I accidentally dropped Q and hit start by accident. So a little bit of a mismenuing by me. Missed the door there a little bit. No, gotta break the blocks first. It's another one of these sort of narrow tunnel rooms. Not nearly as many enemies though. You have these like... Oops, I'm gonna do another one of those. Full health, not full health, but get back some health. Taking quite a bit of damage in 3-2. Not the most difficult level, but I'm having a few troubles here. So there is a healing item over here. This huts away in the water. You can use birding underwater, but it only works in very short intervals. 3-3, the upcoming level. Oh, whoops. Not do that. I want to take all that damage right away, please. Yeah, 3-3, one of the upcoming levels, is one of the hardest levels in the game, and it's also one of the very few levels that actually offers no recovery items throughout whatsoever. Which is one of the reasons why I specifically want to grab the tomato before going into it. Would really rather, you know, play that safe. Having more health going into the level makes it quite a bit more manageable. Also probably should have maybe timed that so I could have grabbed some health, but not a big deal. Got through that first room okay. This enemies in this room, we got a bunch of crabs, plus these things which come out of the walls in the background. You can use burn to get through it. This one in particular, you can see is stuck on a block. So burning through it. It's the optimal strategy. This room, I'll sort of hug the ceiling here, because most of the obstacles are just towards the bottom. And this is a -3 level, so we got a minigame. A bit of RNG here. We don't actually care about the minigame, but it's a counting minigame, and if they give you a large number, the game wastes more time, essentially, you know, actually trying to count it up. First, let me grab both of those. So I get back some health, and I can re-inhale. Trying to work around that enemy, and I end up getting hit after all. Let's see if I can play the rest of this room very carefully. Not bad. Feels good to get through that level without a death. And I don't actually really need to worry about getting a tomato. They do give you a tomato pretty early in 3-4, so as long as I don't take these 2 bits of health, I'll be fine. first room, I'm just going to be hugging the ceiling for it until I get to the very end. I'm going to be going to the bottom corner. Oops. Hold down. Oops. The way that Q works in this game is you kind of almost hug the surfaces that you're touching. So in a case like this, I'm not actually even going up and down, I'm just holding to the right, and Q, you can see, is almost like sticking to the wall. You can definitely take advantage of that in a lot of cases. There are a few cases where if you're sticking to a wall, you're going to do something you might not want to do. This is an auto-scroller, but you can get to a door a bit quicker if you just mash a bunch here. Through the water. There we go. Best ending or 100%, you have to take a very specific path to do the mission objective. In this case, we're just going to take the first two top paths, and just an auto-scroller. You see there's a room beneath us, which is where that other path leads you to another mini-boss. The Q Kirby hitbox in Kirby's Dream Land 3 is a lot more balanced than it is in Kirby's Dream Land 2. Like in Kirby's Dream Land 2, pretty much Kirby can't get hit by anything, and it's only me on the top half, which is Q. Whereas in this one, both Kirby and Q are like active hitboxes, so you need to be a bit more careful in certain situations. You can't exactly like glide by some enemies you might otherwise want to. Alright, 3-5. Not a very hard level. Have an auto-scroller towards the middle. You actually do get some health, which is one of the things that makes it a bit more manageable compared to, say, 3-3. We're taking advantage of learning. I'll try to get through this more efficiently. There actually is a tomato, but I'm at like a pretty decent amount of health, so I'm just gonna go straight down. Just throw caution to the wind, maybe play with a little bit of low health. Grab burns, so I don't have to worry about losing in the last round. So this, in the auto-scroller, the reason I entered that door is by entering and exiting it very quickly, it actually advances the auto-scroller ever so slightly, speeding it up a bit. Usually you would go in that room in best ending so you can grab Chew, which is required for this level, but in this case it's just sort of an extra thing, and we're just using it to get through the auto-scroller ever so slightly faster. This game has a whole bunch of these blocks, which you can only break using certain abilities. In this case, it's Cutter. So kind of the game's way of showcasing this feature by forcing the game into this level. So although you've seen these blocks up until this point, you haven't actually had to use it. It's been sort of optional, pretty much. I'm going to be doing a lot of gooey drops here, because I'm a very low health, and I can only get back 2 health at a time. So, I get back my health, I take 2 hits, and then I immediately have to do it again. There's just so many enemies in this tight little room, and we are okay. I was a little bit nervous there. Taking a death would have been quite unfortunate. Alright, got the pep at least. Would have liked the tomato. Again, there's not actual any health available in 3-6, but it helps to have more health for the World 3 boss. And in situations like this, you really just want to ideally do well in the gold game so you can top up your health. This level 3-6 is one of the longest and best ending. There's a whole bunch of extra missions you have to do, and it's one of the shortest in 90% because you can just skip all of that. I'm taking an extra path here so I can grab Clean, because Clean will be our weapon of choice for this upcoming boss. Do a slight bit of a sidetrack. So yeah, best case scenario is I can get a tomato for the upcoming boss Pawn and Con. Otherwise, it might end up being kind of a bad situation, because trying to do that boss fight at 3 health is really asking yourself to have a bad time. Let's just say that. Got a whole bunch of cannons here, but you can just go right over it, not a big deal. One off the tomato again. That's pretty unfortunate. Alright, I'm still gonna try doing this boss fight. I'm just gonna do it as safe as I can. Pretty much kind of like Rough from Kirby's Dream Land 2, Pawn and Con are gonna just be moving back and forth across the stage. Oops. I'm trying to play this very safe, like I'm trying not to get too close to them. Doing a gooey drop there, pop my health back up. One more hits on Pawn, Fox. Unfortunately, they don't always come out. Sometimes just their little versions come out and waste a bunch of time. This is one of the few points in Kirby's Dream Land 3 where it's RNG. Okay, there we go. That was pretty bad, unfortunately. We're through. Through it at least. And I'm gonna grab that gooey before we go. And we are on to World 4. So 2 more worlds to go. Cloudy Park, same name of the world from last time. Cloudy Park is also the second last world in Kirby's Dream Land 2. What's funny though is the last world in Kirby's Dream Land 3, Iceberg, is actually only the 4th world in Dream Land 2. I'm not exactly sure why they changed it. They just wanted to mess with the order a little bit. Going to, unfortunately, I take a death there. I was trying to do a gooey drop to get back health, and when I was at 1 health, that arrow, the enemy with the arrow sniped me a little bit. Pretty unfortunate, but I can actually get Q back in this level, so it's not that big of a deal. Just gonna keep going. See some of this powerless movement, just running and jumping really. Unfortunately, can't really deal with these enemies very well because of the bones they throw. I'm taking quite a bit of damage as well. So I get Q towards the end of this level, but I will have to do some parts hits without any powers. I'm gonna grab this Galbro and as well as this pep. Oops. Oh, I'm gonna get crushed again. I'm gonna get crushed. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, that was, I should have seen that coming. I was a little slow there. Alright, not very good by me. Not a very good 4-1 at all. But that's alright. There are definitely worse spots to take it down from there, honestly. Like if I got crushed and I had Q, maybe it would have been a bit more sad. But I don't even have Q. So we are doing fine. So you get this burning, the same that it is in Kirby's Dream Land 2. Unfortunately, it's worse because it has like a cooldown to it, which greatly like chops down the range. So it's definitely not as strong as it is in terms of, or as it is in Kirby's Dream Land 2. Still use it in situations like this though. Still useful. And I want to keep burning specifically just because it's a lot better when you do pair it with Q, and I knew I was going to be getting Q back towards the back half of this level. 2 hits barely in close succession. I would argue it wasn't in close succession, but I can't really argue with the game, can I? Oop, I'm struggling here. This 4-1 is not treating me very well right now. So yeah, a whole bunch of boulders there, so you're doing a whole bunch of alternating, burns and unburns. Then this final level, you got a bunch of clouds and some of these witches going through in the sky. I want to avoid them. I'm already at pretty low amount of health, and I'd rather stay as high up as I can. Alright, got the tomato. Awesome. So this level 4-2 is very, very simple. The whole gimmick of it is pretty much you're in the clouds, and there's a whole lot of like enemies and items, or gaps in the floor that like all in the clouds. But because we're abusing Coup and pretty much holding towards the top of the level throughout the whole thing, really this level ends up just being a large amount of mashing. See, it always looks like I'm not going to hit those, like, I'm almost like pterodactyls. It looks like I'm high enough or I'm not going to clip them, and I just barely do. Unfortunately. Yeah, I'm just going to stick high up here. And just pretty much match as fast as I can. This caveman guarding the door. Got Pep too. Pretty solid. Alright, 4-3. The first half of this level is pretty interesting. Then you have the Dash 3 minigame. And then the last part of this level is one of the game's longest auto-scrollers, and there's no way to actually skip it, even if... Like, I can't do auto-scroller skips, but it's not even possible for people who can, unfortunately. Auto-scroller skips in this game are only possible for rooms where you start in a regular room and essentially transitions into an auto-scroller. So any room where you start in an auto-scroller, you can't actually perform an auto-scroller skip. Just due to the way they work. So you can mash a whole bunch underwater with Coup and actually go fast, unlike KDL2, but this mashing is not very fun to do, unfortunately. You have to mash very hard to go still pretty slow, relatively. Gonna be avoiding these cannons here. It's actually faster to just stick outside of them. Alright, I'm gonna guess 1, assuming it's not asking me for a red. Cool. Whoops, I did not want to drop Coup there. Oh, I don't even know what I was trying to do there. I was trying to draw my ability so I can re-inhale Gooey, and I pressed the wrong button. Running this game, especially because I'm a bit rusty on Kirby Dream Land 3 now, and there's a lot of buttons. Like, there's a button for spawning Gooey, there's a button for dropping your animal farm, there's a button for dropping your item. It's easy to get mixed up when you have to do a lot of those in short succession. There goes Gooey, rip. So we'll know the auto-scroller is close to getting done when we start to see the hill in the bottom right corner. I'm just going to chill in the top right corner. Yeah, you can start to see the hill. So once we get a bit closer, there it is. It's actually a little bit late there. Could have moved down a bit earlier. Yeah, 5-4, kind of a tricky level. A lot of enemies in like tight corners. There's also a mini boss, which I am not even joking when I say this. If you do it powerless, it takes close to 5 minutes, if not longer. If you essentially do this boss powerless, it is faster to reset the level, get back to the boss with a power, and beat the boss than it is just to do it powerless. Because it gives you almost no projectiles to work with, and it ends up being horrendously slow. So need to make sure we keep a power with us at all times in this ability, or in this route, or in this level, specifically for that one mini boss. Which is good because you have quite a few options. I'm going to roll with burning though, because it's still just the best. Wow, what a boss, honestly. It's pretty obscene. I don't know why they programmed it like that, because I feel like most people playing this game casually, you know, good chance you just don't have the power when you go into this room, and it just takes so long. It almost feels like you soft lock yourself, but it's just because it's that slow. Okay. This room's a little tricky, because there's enemies both on the top and bottom, so I'm going to try to, like, drift up and down so I just don't get hit by anything. I could grab clean specifically for the boss, but burning works just as well, and burning's going to be useful after the boss. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the right side and try to... Actually, no, I should have stayed on the left side. Because, yeah, that boss jumper shooter, it can spawn projectiles for you to use against him. It just does maybe a projectile every minute or two. And beyond that, it just hops around. That's the most interesting part of this level. Just get through these wind rooms. There's really tiny enemies that almost look like tiny, like little balls of fluff that when you break them, break into 3 smaller balls of fluff. They sort of blend into the clouds, and they see them throughout the game. They can do some damage. This next level of 5-5 is actually one of the easiest levels in the game. You have to do this level with Rick for best ending, and the whole level is designed around using Rick's wall climbing and wall jumping abilities. But because we're just using Ku, and Ku can fly, it ends up being almost kind of like a joke level. There's really not that much to do. So yeah, this is where you would grab Rick, and is that Rick has, you can jump on enemies and do wall climbing and all these cool tech, and so the whole level is built around using this, but you don't need to bother with it when you have Ku. I'm gonna go over these enemies, and then this room, just gonna hold straight upwards, don't go left or right so don't touch the Gordos. It would be really, really helpful for me to get like a tomato here. Awesome. That's very, very good. You can take a lot of damage in the next level. Oops, didn't actually want to split that right away. So getting that tomato, very, very helpful. Ideally, I'm going to end this level with both Ku and clean, but keeping Ku throughout this whole level can be kind of tricky. There will be one point where I think I'm actually going to give Ku to Gooey, just because it's easier to do parts of this level as just Kirby. But I don't want to have to go and grab Ku, so it's easier to just sort of like hand it off temporarily. Gotta go down here. So in these rooms, you just sort of have to wait for the enemy to shoot those things. Gotta bait him over here. And I specifically have to break 2 blocks at a time, so you're gonna see that I aim toward like the middle. Because Ku's a Bit of a big boy, bit of a big owl. Cannot fit by those 1x1 blocks. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna give that to Gooby there, and I'm just gonna have Kirby do this with burning. Cool. I'll do it for this room too, because you can actually just run by these enemies. And that ends up being a lot easier than, you pretty much dodge them, but you wouldn't otherwise. Then, oops. Very good. And this one's actually not the last one, it's the second last one. Try to trick you up a little bit there. I'm going to, whoops, go down here. Gonna grab a queen. Also gonna top up my health while I'm at it, might as well. Very good. And the last room is the same as the first room, but now all these things in the background actually come to life and attack you. So getting through there relatively unscathed, and the fact that I still have both Q and Clean coming out of here is a big time save. Otherwise, you'd have to go re-grab both of them independently from 2 different levels. Alright, we have Addo. Addo's a pretty interesting boss. She actually just essentially draws bosses of other Kirby games, and then you face them. All these bosses are pretty easy except for the last one, Krako. This one is done when she hits Ice Dragon to the Queen. This one's Sweet Stuff from Kirby Dream Land 2 again. I'm gonna bounce around, so I actually have to move around to make sure I get this. Then Mr. Shine, Mr. Bright, they're gonna spawn in opposite corners. I'm gonna start with Mr. I actually don't. I think Bright's the moon. Shine? Yeah, Bright would be the moon. I just realized I don't actually know. Usually just refer to them as something. Alright, and finally the big boss that Addo draws is Krako. Krako takes quite a bit more in terms of hits compared to the other ones. It's still not that hard to do, you just need to look around with speed. And then finally Addo comes at you herself, but she only has 1 HP, so she goes down. And that is Cloudy Park. So we only have one more world, Iceberg, and we'll be done the whole trilogy. So doing pretty good so far. Iceberg, definitely a difficult world. In particular, 5-2. Actually, not really 5-2. I'd say 5-1, 5-4, 5, and 6 are all pretty tough. Go up high in this room and then go back down low. Just taking a lot of unnecessary damage, actually. And I want to grab Burnin', so get that right before I open the door. 2 more rooms. In this final room, you have some wind pushing you backwards, so just need to be a bit careful. These bats can be kind of annoying, but they can grab you and sort of suck away at you, keep you in place for a little bit. Alright, it'd be helpful if I got like a tomato or something here. And I got it. Sometimes definitely worth taking a bit of extra time and actually get it. 5-2 is a pretty simple level. You got a very long auto-scroller at the end, or the beginning, and also like a shorter auto-scroller at the end. This first room, I'm pretty much hugging the top for most of it, then I'll descend to actually reach the door. So for this auto-scroller, the key is actually just to stick in the top right corner. It's sort of like an immunity area. No enemies will hit you from right here. You do need to be careful though, because at the very end of this auto-scroller, if you stick in the top right corner, you'll get crushed. It pretty much leads to a dead end. So towards the very end, I'm just going to have to readjust to make sure that I can actually reach the door. Wait a bit longer. Once the thing gets a little bit closer towards me. Okay. Might take a hit going down here, but I want to be safe, so. Yeah, you can see that there's a, the top path doesn't actually lead anywhere, so it's sort of a dead end. Do you want to grab fire off of one of these enemies before I exit this level? At least this room. Taking quite a bit of a beating right now. Oops. There we go. Right there, I line myself up with the slope of the roof so that I can grab all those peps, which are guarded by a bunch of the, not sure what they're called, but the big yellow enemies, large mouth that grab you midair. There's gonna be 3 snowmen, and the door is right after that. 1, 2, 3. Also, Samus are on. You actually knock out some Metroids as the mission for this level. It's kind of a crossover. Pretty funny. You also get Rob in Kirby's Dream Land 3 in another mission, so a couple of Nintendo cameos throughout. This level starts as a regular room. This room starts as a regular room and then transitions into an auto-scroller as you enter the water. This is a Dash 3 level, so we'll have a mini-game at some points. It's a sound mini-game, but again, we're just going to intentionally get it wrong, so we can skip it. I have to lag the game, not lag the game, but the game pauses temporarily, the auto-scroller pauses when I re-grab the animal friend, but it's worth it just to get back to full health. This auto-scroller is fairly long, so you get through that part, and then you can kind of just hug the ceiling for the remaining bits. Need 3 ice blocks. Need to be in the right spots. So you can go down here. There So that minigame was probably the last actual two-player strategy that I'll like, be using throughout this run. There aren't that really many that you can do back after this run anyways. And that was the last minigame. So because I actually have Gooey still out, I have to press the button to make sure that he can also do the minigame. I'm gonna actually get rid of Gooey there because I don't want Gooey floating around, especially for one of these rooms coming up. I think if Gooey's out, it can mess up some of the enemy AI and make them do something I don't want them to do. So I'm just going to inhale him real quick, even though I don't even really need the health. This room, I'm just going to hold down. There's a whole bunch of Galabros you'll see to my left and right. If you move left or right, you'll awake them. But if you just hold down when you're in this room, you can just go through the room. Just need to make sure that you remember that before you enter the room. Hopefully avoid getting grabbed under those. Very nice. So this scenario where they force you to grab ice, very similar to that in Trilogy. In this case, we already have fire ahead of time to break the ice. But otherwise, there's a room, a side room, where you can grab it. So we're gonna have a mini boss coming up. Kind of one of the more annoying mini bosses. The snowman can pretty much throw its head and turn into smaller snowman. And in those cases, you need to knock out the smaller snowman to actually do damage to it. That was pretty good. Got a nice pattern. Solid. Just a little bit of unnecessary damage at the end. So now we have one of, I think that actually is the longest level in the game coming up, 5-5. This level is pretty much a castle, and it's pretty difficult. There's a whole bunch of rooms and memorization of the rooms. It's like one of the most important parts of this level, but it comes with playing it a lot, really. If I do lose Q, I can get Q partway through. Although this is actually the last level we'll be using Q. We'll be finishing this run with the Chew for the boss rush that is 5-6, as well as the final boss of King AB. Should have just held up there. I think my default is usually holding right, because in almost every room, you know, that's the first inputs you're going to be doing is moving towards the right. Be careful here, trying to burn through these bricks. There isn't much of the way of like readily available health throughout this level. There's a few areas where you can get it, but it takes kind of a while to... Oh, I don't want to do this, I want to try to spawn you, and... There we go. That was very awkward, I pressed the wrong button and dismounted Q again. It's a good thing I didn't drop burn there, because I needed it to break all those blocks, otherwise it would have been quite slow. So that's the room where you can grab Ku with Kine. I already have it, so don't need to worry about that. Quick hands. You gotta have quick hands in this game, especially if you're doing the one-player, two-controller stuff. Gotta be able to multitask well is actually probably the best way to describe it. Got a fake Kirby sighting right there. Reeler with the fake Kirby. Love it. Just passing the 2-hour mark now. Oops. Do a gooey drop, get back some health, and I need to grab one of these cleans. I need to have cleans. The important part. I don't actually need Ku anymore at this point. In fact, I'm even gonna get rid of Ku at this point. I no longer think I want to do the next few rooms without Ku. Be a bit easier. But I do need clean. It's important. It's a lot easier to do. Okay, don't take any unnecessary damage right there. And this is the final room. Awesome. And that is the castle. Now we have the airship. So I don't need to actually get health there. I can get a tomato. 5-6, the level coming up, and the final regular level is pretty much a boss rush. So I need clean, and I already have it. I'm going to be grabbing Chu before the boss rush. If you thought that clean and Ku was broken, then you should see clean and Chu. Definitely not as good for the actual levels, but in terms of just the bosses, I think clean and Chu is the highest damage per second, like in this game. I'm going to do a split order, so to the left. I'm going to grab the tomato here. Then I'm going to take the middle path, so I need to grab Chu. Then I'm gonna go left. Cool. Oops, wrong way. Yeah, so pretty much the base end of the broom that I spawn with Chu is the actual hurt box, or I guess hit box of my attack. And so I need to essentially get up close, do a turnaround, and this hitbox can absolutely nuke enemies. Okay. Sometimes doing a little turnaround in the air can help you space it. This one room, which is just a bunch of enemies. I'm gonna play a bit safe and grab his health. So yeah, for Stitch, you need to wait for him to throw his spikes, kind of like in Kirby too. But he goes down a lot easier. And we are on to the final boss, King DDD. King DDD literally takes only about 30 seconds. It is very, very quick. So one of the easier boss fights, assuming I don't mess up, time will not end on when red goes here. He's gonna have a second phase, and time will end at the end of the second phase. Okay, so when red hits, or when this bar of red hits, like it's empty, he'll be done. He'll land a couple of hits here. Oof, didn't want to do that. I'm one hit away from dying, and that's time. Alrighty. 108.42 for Kirby's Dream Land 3, which I think is like a couple of seconds behind my personal best, and a 204.21. That's world record by 6 minutes, or technically not world record, because Dark Riolu has the world record of the sub 2, but at least SRC world record by 6 minutes. My PB beforehand was like a 210, and I got a 204, so I'm pretty stoked about that. All right. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. Got more runs coming up for TACOthon too, but definitely enjoyed doing this trilogy of speedruns. Had a lot of fun doing it, and hope you all enjoyed watching. And yeah, I also want to thank the great Todd Man for, of course, organizing this event and accepting my invitation to join, getting to play. Really appreciate that.